This episode is brought to you by CBD TV, your one-stop shop for all your CBD needs. Use code FRESHOUT to get 15% off your next order. What's up, everybody? Big Herc 916 getting down fresh out. You tune into another episode of Prison Talk, and I have with me here David Bohler, ex-law enforcement, very experienced in having been behind the lines as far as dealing with people and situations, working in the Department of the Police. And, you know, we're always trying to be cutting edge over here, and we like to give everybody equal opportunity to share conversation so that we can get some answers and find solutions to things that, you know, we are all curious about and dealing with in society right now. David, one of the questions, you know, we've had as far as with some of our viewers is like, who does somebody turn to when they have to deal with, say, what is considered a law enforcement official that is not upstanding? There was a situation where we interviewed a ex-law enforcement official on our channel, and he used to rob drug dealers. And this person had a crew, and that was one of their hustles. And in the process, after this person, you know, kind of got caught up in an investigation, one of the drug dealers they robbed actually testified in federal court against this particular officer. And this officer said, well, you know, that guy snitched on me. And, you know, upon hearing him say that, it was like, well, I mean, dude, you're a cop, you're robbing, you're tying up, beating up drug dealers. I mean, what is the solution to that? I mean, you're you know, this guy, I'm not saying he was in the right for selling drugs, but then you're, you know, with a badge and you have authority, and a person's not going to open the door and shoot at the police, logically. So for you to say that he was a snitch and then you were, you know, in the right, I mean, where does the balance of power come from? Because even that person, I mean, for the average person, it's not even as serious as that, but still, I mean, what recourse does a person have?
All right, so as far as reporting that, well, let me back up on the snitch thing just a second. First of all, everybody defines snitch in their own way, all right? But the way I see it, you're not snitching if you're reporting somebody else's misconduct being done to you or someone else that you have not participated in. Does that make sense? Like, say, you and I we're going to take down a couple of drug dealers, we're going to rob them, whatever. Now, if I snitched you, you know, if I told on you, to me, that's being a snitch. Now, if I'm the victim or if I'm the recipient of that misconduct and I'm trying to report to authorities, me personally, outside of prison, outside of jail, I don't see that as snitching, right? Now, I think another situation where you're being a snitch is if it's something that you heard about, you didn't personally witness, you didn't experience, and you're trying to get some kind of favorable action or some kind of favor or something like that by turning somebody in. To me, that's a rat. You know, that's straight up. Just like in my situation with the fellow cops, you know, I kind of wondered a little bit if I was going to be looked at, you know, by you guys as maybe a snitch, but, you know, I didn't participate in what these dirty cops were doing. The moment I found out about it, I took it through channels and ultimately got the charges dismissed against the man. I didn't feel like I snitched on that guy. I don't feel like I snitched. Now, as far as reporting misconduct on a police officer, now that all varies by agency. You got agencies of different sizes. You got different chiefs of police. You got different sheriffs. They got different policies, okay? That's one thing. There's not a lot of standardization as far as requiring an internal affairs investigation on every complaint, okay? So you got to look at, let's say in that particular situation, this person is being robbed, you know, you're certainly not helping yourself if you're the drug dealer being robbed by a cop. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You got to get out of the life, you know?
Yeah.
if you're going to live in that life, I think you're always going to be at that. You're going to be at risk for that of other criminals, because let's face it, if that cop's robbing you, they're just a criminal with a badge, right? I think you got to get out of that life, you know. But if let's say you witness that, you see somebody, you see a cop shaking somebody down for money, whatever, and you want to report that, you know, you've got to make an assessment of the kind of agency that you're dealing with. If you're distrustful of that police department, or you think that, you know, ultimately they're going to retaliate against you, you've got state investigative agencies, anti-corruption agencies in every state, run by, you know, let's say California. I think California's got a state bureau of investigation. I know Tennessee does, Florida, Georgia. They have units that are solely dedicated to corruption. And then, of course, you have the FBI. Each field office, or at least regionally, the FBI has agents dedicated to corruption investigations. Now, they do a lot of things. It's been my experience, the FBI don't usually get involved in anything unless it's going to give them some big headlines. It's going to be a lot of people going down. Now, with your state agencies, you know, that officer is going to be looked at. They're going to be talked to. Whatever that's going on, that officer knows they're going to be a subject of the investigation. Now, you as the complainant, the person that's reporting that, they should never identify you. They should never let that officer know what's up, or that you're involved in it, unless ultimately, if that officer is prosecuted, you might be brought forward as a witness in that case. But, you know, you got to clean your house, you know, before you go, you know, report and stuff like that. Let's just be real. Now, if let's say it's a general, let's just say it's just a real shitty cop, somebody that's just bullying out on the street, using their authority to bully people, whatever, may not be profiting from it, may not be technically breaking the law, but should not be dealing with people, you know, and you want to report that, you go in, you talk to that officer supervisor, and you ask them, and you make an evaluation on how well that supervisor receives you. You know, if they start questioning you, wanting your name and your date of birth and things like that, they don't need that shit. You know, they need to know how to contact you if this becomes administrative charges that they're going to bring against that officer, right? But the chances are, if you're bringing something like that in there, it's not the first time they've heard that about that cop. You might be the one, you might be the straw that breaks the camel's back, and might be able to give that supervisor, let's say it's an ethical supervisor, the leverage they need to get rid of that freaking cop. Okay? But you've got to everybody's got to make that evaluation based on how they're received by the person that's taking that complaint. Now, when they take that complaint, don't be overt about it, don't be obnoxious about it, but casually pay attention to that person's name tag. Pay attention to what time of day that you gave that report to that person, that complaint to that person. Because let's say they're in on it. They haven't, you know, they placate you and they take the complaint, and then nothing's ever done, and you really want to push it and you don't feel like they're going to do anything, and then you go to an outside agency like the State Bureau of Investigation or the FBI and say, hey, I filed a complaint, they didn't do anything about this. Be able to provide them the name of the person that you gave that complaint to. The time of day, the day of the week is real important, because if they start an investigation, a corruption investigation into that agency, they're going to go back, they're going to look at duty logs and things like that, and they're going to see this supervisor was on duty at that time. It's going to further corroborate your story. It's going to make your statement more credible when you've got that person's name. Maybe if their badge number, I never had a badge number, but if you got their name, you got their rank, time of day, and day of the week, you know, they're not going to get off that duty roster. Their pay stubs ultimately will show if they were working that day. It's going to corroborate your story. That would be my best advice to somebody. You know, when you're dealing with and most of your police departments, you know, the vast majority are usually less than 50 officers. So they all know each other. They're all pretty close. So you might want to consider that. But again, you've got to get a sense. You've got to be able to read how you're being received. That's your first indicator on what you should do. That's probably the best way I can answer that.
Okay. Another question I had that I'm sure a lot of viewers would, want to ask is, typically when you see somebody that's in a situation, say a traffic stop, and I always, you see people and some of the stuff I'm like, dude, why don't they just comply, make it as simple as possible? What are some of the things a person can avoid rather than getting themselves caught up in a situation that could lead to something, beyond what just a simple, resolution could have been. Because some of the people I feel like, dude, when you create that, I know there's like almost like a gauge when you come up to the car to feel the vibe, and when a person's kind of, it's like they feel like they're hiding something. I mean, there's certain things that trigger, like, hey man, we'll just get out the car, rather than just, hey, driver's license, registration, just keep it simple.
All right, so let's be, I'm just going to speak from experience, everything else. All right, first of all, if you look in your rearview mirror and that officer gets out and they look like they're under 25, watch your P's and Q's, because they're just like, cops mature with age. So if you're looking at a young one, that young one is learning how to establish control or authority or a measure of control to survive that stop and to address the violation or whatever it is they're doing. Let's look, and I compare them to young vipers, right? Young snakes. They can't control that venom output sometimes. Just like a young man that gets pulled over a lot of times can't control their venom. You got to watch that. You got to keep that from happening. But when you see that young officer get out, be careful, Or if you see that one that gets out that has every piece of metal you could possibly put on that uniform. Got the whistle chain shining, just bling, bling. Yeah. He's got the badge, he's got the serving sense, and he's got like every possible stripe that you could award for, basically showing up at the Cupcake Festival and directing traffic, and he's got that award on there. You're going to get a ticket. You're going to get a ticket. Count on it. That is a traffic cop. That is their job. Take the ticket. Sign the form. It's not an admission of guilt. When you get into that kind of, what's the word I'm looking for here? It's when you get into that kind of adversarial situation, be slick. No, it's not. That's not the place to confront them. That's what that court is for. That's where, there's other things that you can do. It's time to get quiet and start paying attention to name tags. Start paying attention to the description of the officer, things that officer's saying. Turn that phone on. Record. Don't hold it up in their face. I think that is the most antagonistic thing in the world. That's going to heighten emotions. That's going to, but do I think you should have it on? Damn right you should have it on. There's no law against it, but you ain't got to hold it in their face going there, Why would you do that? Why would you antagonize somebody that has the authority to at least initially take your freedom away from you and disrupt your life? It's a ticket. Take the ticket. And then fight the hell out of it in court.
That's right.
If you're wrong, if you got something going on and you're rolling dirty, you really need to be quiet.
Yeah.
You really need to be quiet. From time to time, I was never a drug investigator. I didn't do that kind of stuff, right? But from time to time, you roll up. Let's say I'm looking for a chomo or somebody like that, right? We make a stop. We try to take them down, see if they'll do anything that's, we stop them for a legit reason, and let's watch their behavior. That chomo comes out of that car, start arguing like, "What'd you stop me for?" Well, I'm gonna know something's in that car. He don't want me to see it, so he wants to have our encounter right here. Well, guess what? I ain't gonna put you back in that car. You're gonna sit right here, and then you just gave me the authority, the legal authority, to come look in your car before I sit you back in it. So now you got anything within arm's reach, I can look there And guess what? My partner's going to sit with you while I go look. And then if I find something dirty, guess what, Chomo? You're going. That the best, just think about things. It's called a civil society, and there's a civil way to do everything. And if that officer is being a prick, in the end, there is a way to address it. You may not win. You may not ultimately win, but every time that you fight in a righteous way, every time that you take that, challenge that officer in a civil way in court, things like that, you're growing. That officer's getting experience. That officer's getting the message. I better not do that shit again. That's the best advice I could possibly give. It's a very difficult situation, but I mean, you've got to have people out there. You've got to have people with the authority to do the mission of maintaining and or restoring a lawful peace. That's a cop's job. Now, I think there's something's gone on in this generation since I got in. There's been a couple of generations of officers come through. We got away from that title, peace officer. Peace officer. And everything's all about law enforcement. Enforcement. You don't necessarily need to enforce a law to restore the peace. And I think, one of the dangers of defunding the police and things like that is basically you're going to have a bunch of half-paid, half-trained, because they didn't have the money to train them, enforcers. That's all they're capable of doing. There's not going to be that officer that realizes, hey, probably be less crime here, less situations going on if I just talk to the street department and have some street lights put in. You won't have that. You won't have that with the defunded police department. All these politicians right now that are saying defund. Whenever their little game is over, when they start withdrawing their support or their the free reign that they're given to Antifa and BLM right now, when that happens, and it's going to happen, all these cops are going to be off the job. You're losing your 10-year veterans. Those are the best ones to have. A cop is not a good cop till they've been on the job a minimum of 10 years. That's the one that knows how to apply their discretion, that knows how to talk to people, that knows how to de-escalate, and really recognizes that there's two sides to that domestic violence situation, that's going to apply the appropriate measures to resolve it, not necessarily enforcement. You're losing them right now. When they pull, they're leaving. They're leaving by the hundreds. When their replacements get in there, you're going to have you're going to have a bunch of hammers driving nails. They're not going to be scientific about anything they're going to do, and you back talk the wrong one. Their education is going to consist of write ticket or go to jail. So everybody needs to really think about that. You need to stop pushing the defund narrative. You want to defund, you need to defund some of these politicians.
That's right.
That are allowing you to rattle that bell, because before all these protests stopped, those were the politicians propping up that blue wall. They were the ones holding up that wall of silence. Then when that wall came crumbling down, they got on your side and started throwing shit at the cops and treating them like that. Those are the ones that need to be addressed. The changes, the things that are being pushed for, targeting the cops, that is a shallow attempt. You're not changing shit. You're just making things worse.
That's right. And there you have it from David Bohler, Big Herc 916, Prison Talk.